will probably hear them coming.
All right. Dog and kid alert as we go live on a Thursday. Legal podcast. Justin Watkins, Battle Worn Injury Lawyers is here. Judge Dan is here as well. Justin, what's on the hat? What's the logo?
G4.
What is it?
G4. It's a golf apparel company. I'm not being paid for this, but the most comfortable golf shoes I've ever worn.
Oh, wow.
And they now make a street shoe, which is also the most comfortable shoe I've ever worn. It's something about they got like a massaging insole in them, padding on the foot. It's awesome. Out of sight.
Where can I buy them?
I think it's G4.com.
Oh, you bought them online?
Yeah.
Damn. Fancy schmancy.
No, I was fan. Just what do you mean? Like Zappos is fancy? It's an online retailer.
Right.
No, it's not Zappos. I don't know if they have retail stores. I just went to the website. Okay. The only bit of advice I would say is they run a little bit small. So if you're a 10.5, you get 11. Go half size large.
All right. For both of you guys, is anyone watching the NBA Finals?
I watched most of this game. Yeah.
Dan?
At halftime, I wanted a little Minute Maid fruit punch, so I went to Walmart and I forgot it was on when I came back. So I guess to answer your question, no. Although Suns and Four Guy is very popular in Denver for some reason. For some reason, we enjoyed the fact that some dude came to our crib, half the building was cheering for the Suns fans in Denver, and then some dude beat up the idiots in Nuggets jerseys. So I guess Suns and Four Guy is actually popular here in Denver. If you're familiar with who he is.
I mean, yeah, I'm familiar. Believe me, after I was intro to the video a couple of days late past everyone else, they come up every day, and obviously Suns and Four are still alive, so our long national nightmare will continue. I'm sure the merchandising will be out of control for this dude if the Suns actually win in Four. Jesus.
Yeah. Well, and then that guy, the guy that got beat up, did it was rather lame and pathetic, but he did like a sit down interview trying to explain how he didn't get his ass beat, but he did.
What? What do you mean? What does that even mean? How he didn't get his ass beat? What was he covered up the whole time? What was his explanation?
He got scratched, and that was why he turtled, but he really wasn't hurt. It's basically he was wasted, so it doesn't count. And also he just got scratched on his bridge of his nose. So he was just like, I'm disinterested now. And I'm too drunk to know what's going on. So I didn't really get beat up.
By the way, I don't know a whole lot about the background on Suns and Four Guy. I've kind of chosen to ignore it. I don't know what his fighting background is, but I don't think Jake Paul would be minus 550 against Suns and Four Guy.
I don't think Suns and Four Guy. I don't think it was all that impressive. He beat up two relatively weak drunk dudes. I mean, it wasn't that much of a challenge.
Justin, are you on board? Suns and Four Guy, not that impressive.
Not that impressive.
Wow. All right. So then,
it was impressive that he was like looking around and just delivering uppercuts and stuff like that. But it's not like he's gonna, win a professional boxing match,
Well, we're not asking him to fight a professional boxing match. We're saying Jake Paul.
But the guy's got some sort of competition experience on which one's Jake Paul? Is he the guy that, I don't know, one has more experience than the other, right?
One takes it more seriously. Yeah. The one is the dude who knocked out Ben Askren and also took out whatever his name is, Nate Robinson. The other one's the one who just kind of danced and hugged Floyd.
Yeah.
So
1,000 to 1, maybe, or minus 1,000, minus 1,010. I don't know.
Justin, you agree?
I don't know. I don't have any interest.
Yeah, me too.
It needs to hit a little closer to home for me to care about fights that aren't professional fights. And Suns and Four Guy and Jake Paul do not hit anywhere close to my home. I don't care about either one of them.
Yeah, any of the Paul fights I could care less about
right.
either. It's just
me too.
Who cares? Like, to be honest with you, I don't even know how the heck Mayweather didn't, knock that dude out. I don't understand.
Yeah, because he intentionally didn't want to knock him out. That's why.
Why not?
Keep enough intrigue so he can fight his brother for even more money.
All right. Why does anybody pay? I mean, why would anybody pay for? I don't know why anybody paid for anything. Like, why?
People keep doing it.
Did we ever get the final numbers on that fight? How many people actually paid for it?
I don't think we did. No, I don't think we did. I think obviously it was bloated. I mean, we keep hearing that Floyd made it north of $50 million. So, are you Justin? Do you care at all about Conor back?
Yeah, I'm gonna watch it. Yeah, for sure. I watch most UFC cards, so that's not too different. But I think that it's gonna be awesome for the people who are in the building. I think T-Mobile's gonna have a crazy amount of energy going on in there. I think there's some intrigue. I think Conor's, from most perspectives of people, is sort of fighting for his career here. I think UFC will keep trotting him out for as long as he's willing to trot out, even if he loses this, just because he can sell tickets. But he may not want to go back out there if he loses this fight. And I think a lot of people think that. I was actually golfing today and got paired up with a couple dudes from Philadelphia who flew all the way out here just for the fight. Yeah, they're fired up about it. And
oh wow.
So I think it's good for the sport. It's good for Vegas. Good. I think it's good to have a full building for it, and hopefully, the rising sort of COVID numbers aren't drastically impacted one way or the other.
Didn't at one point, wasn't there like Conor was like, I'm too big for the sport. I may not even fight MMA again. Like, I don't need it. Maybe I'll do the boxing, and I'm just so gigantic in the world. I walk away from UFC. Wasn't that like a thing for a while?
I still don't think he needs it.
But now, but this is it. Like, he's reduced to begging, I overlooked this guy before. Like, and you're talking about they'll trot him out as long as they can trot him out just to make money off the dude. Like, it's
I think UFC will. I don't know that he'll do that.
He is right now. Isn't that what he's doing? That's what he's doing right now.
Whoa, here we go.
That was scary.
Cofields.
That was scary. Yeah, that was. We've entered another dimension.
I thought he was going to start debating himself about Conor versus Poirier.
Well, that was like the two Supermans. Was like one of those Cofields. Like, he's got like a wife and kids and like a station wagon. He's like taking him to soccer practice.
He's been doing local radio in Topeka this whole entire time.
Yes, I don't know, man. That's oh, there he is. Which one is it? Which
is it? The evil Cofield?
They're both evil. It's just one's more evil than the other. I was going to bring in my alter ego to start arguing with the other one, because I was like, these guys aren't fired up, so I'll just start screaming at myself. I don't know what you're talking about. Fuck you. No, the fight's a decent fight, and Conor McGregor's not 1,000 years old, and he did overlook Poirier. He looked fat and puffy. I thought, not fat, but he just looked too bulky. He didn't look as lean. His stance was all jacked up. I buy that a little bit. Like, boxing screwed him up. Now he's got to go back to the basics. This is outside of Floyd Mayweather. Conor is every high-level fighter we've ever seen at some point. And who was on the other day talking about the famous line? I think it was from whoever, Marvin Hagler. Getting up to do the road work in the morning at 5 o'clock in the morning ain't that easy when you're walking out there in your silk pajamas or whatever, your silk robe. When you get super rich, who the hell wants to get up at 5 in the morning and do all the work? And I don't think Conor did all the work he needed to for the Poirier fight the first time around. So he can win this one. But like Justin said, he doesn't need it. Like, he doesn't have to beg to fight this guy. I think he just made like $200 million on his whiskey sale, and he's probably worth, north of $300 million. He's probably going to make 20 or 30 for this fight. So, as long as he still has some passion, I think he's still going to fight, and people want to watch it.
Yeah, I agree. He doesn't need it financially, probably, but you never know with these guys. Like, who knows? But
you're right.
But he obviously is doing it for a reason, and he's not doing it because he's, the king anymore. He's doing it, I don't know, for attention, or he's doing it for some insatiable need to be looked at. I don't know, because he's not at the top of the sport anymore, right? I mean, he's at the top of the draw, right? He's still a top draw, but he's not the top dog anymore.
the best guy at 155 is retired. His style is terrible. He's a wrestler. I mean, his style is terrible for Conor. Can Conor compete with everyone else in the division now? Yeah, because most of the guys are stand-up.
What do you mean he can? Like, when's the last quality fight maybe I'm speaking out of ignorance here. Don't get me Cowboy Cerrone. Like, when was the last quality win he had? I don't know. I mean, I don't know. I really don't know, but who is it?
That's a good question. Let's look it up. Who was the last big fight that he...
Diaz? I don't know. Like,
yeah, I mean, Diaz is pretty high level fighter, although he slipped a little bit. Nate Diaz, he came back after whatever it was, 2 years. So it's a good question. And that's a question going in. Like, does he have it anymore? Has the division caught up with him? As long as people don't wrestle him and try to submit him, then he's an entertaining fighter. I mean, who cares if there's 5 guys who are good at 155 and most of them want to just go and freaking slug it out and potentially leave on a stretcher? Then I think people are going to want to pay for that and want to watch it.
Yeah, I think he's still got a puncher's chance against anybody in the division, and so I think that still makes him a threat and makes it worth watching. I mean, I think a good Conor is a good for the sport. There was the last 4 years, just all the big draws, either retired or for whatever reason, suspension or otherwise, couldn't fight. And so, Conor carried it for a little bit. And I hope, I've never been a huge Conor fan, but I kind of hope he wins this so that, he gets back into it and maybe makes a run at the title again.
I think they need it because he's the one guy they respect enough to pay. And he's got leverage because right now, I don't know what the deal is with Dana White, but the 2 top heavyweights, and John Jones is a top heavyweight. He's arguably the best fighter of this generation. I don't know. Dana wants to, F around with him, and now Ngannou got all froggy because he saw the money that Jones was asking for and that the Paul brothers supposedly are making. So now he's got it out for Ngannou. So that fight should be happening 2 and 3 times, and this is that's the disappointing part. UFC is kind of turning into boxing, and by the way, we just saw. We'll get into this with Wilder and Fury now. That's going to be off, so we just get effed out of a freaking really good card or a really good fight on the 24th this month in a couple of weeks. So
did they cancel it?
I don't know if it's official. Fury tested positive. So
he tested positive. I heard something about it. It was in his camp.
They had 10 guys in the camp test positive, and supposedly he's one of them, and he actually only has one of the shots, not the second. So I guess we need to find out what the deal is. I mean, I don't know. I saw some people making the excuse, well, the UK hasn't rolled out the shots as quickly, and then someone fired back and said, well, he's here most of the time, so of course he could have gotten both of the shots. So, I mean, if you're in the United States, you can get both of the shots. And to me, I'll have to look it up. Does anyone in the chat room know what Fury and Wilder do? I mean, we know on the boxing side, I am guessing they were both due north of like $25 million. I don't know, man. To fart around and not be fully vaccinated well in advance of your fight seems ludicrous to me.
Yeah, it's insane.
Yeah, I'm not aware of any restrictions on. I don't recall them ever asking, like, you don't have to be a U.S. citizen or anything like that to get the shots here. I don't remember them ever asking that or any even personal identifying information.
We're doing pop-ups at restaurants and bars, and we were given giveaways left and right.
They had it on 60 Minutes. They had people from Spain or wherever flying into, what was it, West Palm or wherever, like counties in Florida, just flying in on their jets, getting off, getting a shot in the arm, and flying out. Like that was months ago. Like that's not now, right before a fight.
So, Justin, are you going to either event this weekend?
No. I'll watch though.
You're not going to go. You seem like a Garth guy.
Oh, yeah, I am going to Garth.
He's like, oh, of course. I'm in the Battleborn suite. What, duh?
I know. I'll go to Garth, though, yeah.
I would. Let me tell you, if you have a Battleborn suite, then I would really start busting your balls about the other side of the tracks. Because
please.
The suite's there. The suite's there. Freaking, that's highfalutin stuff.
He's like, Jacob, shut up. I told you not to mention the Battleborn. No, the first rule of the Battleborn suite is we don't talk about the Battleborn suite.
We don't even have a Battleborn seat at the arena, but friend of mine bought tickets to Garth a long time ago. So me and the wife and our friends are going. So we just been watching it get delayed for a year and a half, and here we go.
You're wearing a mask, right?
I don't know. Is it required?
No, but I mean,
no.
We've got an outbreak here.
Huh?
We've got an outbreak here. LV locally was just reporting today. She's real connected, saying that, hey, a bunch of events could be canceled coming up here. We have a outbreak going down around Las Vegas.
What type of outbreak? I mean, like, how serious are we talking about?
What we have?
Where did LV locally get her medical degree?
Well, you hear things about the possibility of events being canceled, and we have jumped up a little bit in terms of positivity rate, have we not? The numbers are up.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah, but any serious sickness hospitalizations are all still well above 99% of the people who are being hospitalized are unvaccinated. Unvaccinated.
Okay. Well, you don't feel, but I know multiple vaccinated people who've now tested positive.
Yeah. Did they get sick? Like, did they go to the hospital?
No hospital. The one guy was in bad shape for a little while.
Yeah.
There's permanent damage, my friend.
The fear merchant.
You have kids to raise. You have a long life to lead. You want to have lung issues?
Bro, I went to six Golden Knights games with 18,000 people. At least they can open the window at Allegiant. I know it won't because it'll be 115 degrees, but a little bit more air circulation in there. No, I'm not wearing a mask.
We have a Battleborn Broadcast Center studio to protect. We have to feel safe when we go into your studio, please.
You want me to wear a mask at the Art Brooks for your protection at the
no
3v?
Fear merchant, Cofield.
We're out there next Wednesday at the BBBC, and I will require a test. So I have a quick turnaround test. You can buy your own test now, so we'll all be tested. I guess.
Yeah. All right. If it makes you feel better, I'll tell you I'm going to wear a mask.
Yes.
It's not really for me. I'm concerned. I'm hearing vaccinated people are getting it, and it worries me. That's all.
Yeah, we had a vaccinated person at my office get it, and 3 or 4 days, and everything back. And the thing about her positive test and her symptoms is that day a bunch of people happened to be around her. We had a staff meeting, and everybody was in contact with her. Nobody else got it. So that seems to be along the lines of the science, right? No serious, not zero, but very, very, very few people who are fully vaccinated get sick enough that they have to go to the hospital, and very, 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 very few of them are transmitting it to others.
Okay.
That's well, going on.
My anecdotal evidence is I told you I know two people who went to the Vegas Golden Knights game, either 2 or 5, and they both got it, and that's where they think they got it. And the one guy was vaccinated, and he was kind of in rough shape for a while. I don't know the condition of the other person. I know another family where the father got it, the mom and son got it, but they were asymptomatic, and and they were unvaccinated. In their case, they were unvaccinated, and the father has had a rough time for a couple of weeks. I know another person I work closely with whose wife just tested positive, and I haven't found out from him if he's positive, and I didn't ask if they're vaccinated. So, you just get spooked.
Yeah, I mean, I guess how do they find out they're positive, right? Like, I mean, I got a cold a couple weeks ago. Time's up with sort of going to the Golden Knights games. I didn't feel good for about 48 hours, but I also had no reason to get tested, right? Like, I didn't go run and get a test about it. 48 hours later, I was all good. So I think, yeah, you're going to find some vaccinated people who get positive tests because their line of work requires testing more frequently. The question is, I mean, for what I'm looking for is like, do you get seriously irreparably sick if you're vaccinated? If this Delta variant does that kind of thing, then yeah, maybe I'll go back to wearing a mask. But again, the mask doesn't protect me, it protects everybody from me, right? So I can go to Garth with my mask on, but if there's 64,000 other people without a mask, my mask ain't helping me.
Was it a cheap mask, or you have to get a better mask?
None of the masks do, right? Is this what it's? I mean, outside of a N95 mask, that's not what's going to do it, right?
Well, that's an
N95. I thought the masks. I thought we covered that. Like, it offers you some protection, not 100. You're right in that it protects others more than it protects you, but it also protects. Didn't they have the little meme with peeing outside your pants, peeing in your pants? I mean, like, it's not like it offers you zero protection, right? Like if somebody comes and coughs in your face, if you're wearing a mask and not wearing a mask, it's going to offer you some protection, is it not?
Well, I'm a little. I mean, not that I'm a denier. I'm certainly not a COVID denier, but the science early on, right, was that the masks are to protect everybody else, and then I think like the government realized, holy shit, people don't care about protecting everybody else; they only care about protecting themselves. So we better remessage this and say they offer some protection to you as well. Now, I don't know, double, triple masks. You get up. I don't know what the hell that shit does. Maybe it does help you. I'm not doing it. Like unless we see some like spikes and some sicknesses in vaccinated people, then I've done everything I can to protect myself. If people go unvaccinated to these things and get sick, they made that choice. They took that risk.
Freedom, man. Freedom. Fight for it. Freedom. Let's see. Justin, a rare liberal COVID realist. Justin equals voice of reason. I don't know about that.
Me neither. I don't know.
My body, my choice.
Yeah, exactly. You don't have to go to Garth.
You do.
I'm going to Garth.
I'm not. I'm leaving town. I'm getting out of here. I will not be around the 85,000 people between the fortress and the owl.
I don't know if I've ever talked about this on the pod or on air, but like what my wife's out of town right now. That's why I got the kids, and maybe they come in, maybe they interrupt, maybe my dog barks here in a minute. But so the technology that they've used, did I talk about this, Steve? No. So the technology that they've used for the COVID vaccine with the Pfizer and Moderna, the mRNA technology, they believe that same sort of technology can be used to provide cures for genetic-based cancers. My wife's in LA right now getting her first shot of her breast cancer vaccine. She's part of a trial. It's a long trial. It's like a 5-year trial, but through the Mayo Clinic. And if that's what comes out of all this, man, kick ass. If we come up with, some solution, some vaccination, some protections against genetic-based cancers, and then it could modify into non-genetic-based cancers, that would be really something.
That would be cool. I hadn't heard of that. You did not talk about that before.
Yeah. So that's where she's at. First shot today.
Pickle says, if I only learned one thing from this pandemic, it's that the majority of people in this country are just selfish. Not that I didn't already have an idea that was the case, but yeah.
Yep, that's right. If there was any doubt, you send out a message to the masses and say, can you do this to help others? They're not fucking doing it. If you say you need to do this to help yourself, they're probably going to do it.
It's like the guy at the blackjack table that keeps stealing all the cards from the rest of the table. They don't care.
You actually say anything?
To the guy stealing all the cards?
Yeah.
Andrus does.
I've been around. Say something. I've been around Chad. Yeah, I've noticed that he will. He'll get very annoyed. That's why I play Pygo. It's more of a community effort, so you can't. I love
Pygo. Yeah,
it's just Pygo. So you just get to drink a little bit. All right. Well, let's tackle one of the tough cases of the week, and we don't have any more details on it. All we know is that Trevor Bauer got another 7-day extension on his league exemption. He's on the exempt list. He can't play. A lot of the discussion I saw from a lot of the legal insiders who appear on radio and TV was all about the theory of consent. That's kind of that's the defense of the Bauer side. So I'll start with Justin. What does that even mean? And then how can that get torn apart by the victim, the lady who's throwing the allegations at Trevor Bauer?
Well, I mean, it's the linchpin of the case, right? I mean, she says that Trevor Bauer roughed her up, and he says, you asked me to rough you up, and here's the text to prove it. You wanted rough sex. You wanted me to slap you around. You wanted me to hit you, and to choke you, and just stick my hands or fingers down your throat, I think was in there. That's what you wanted, and so I was just fulfilling your sexual fantasy. Now, just because parties consent doesn't mean that that can completely alleviate you of any potential criminal or civil liability. It doesn't always in every instance. It's not a fail-safe. It doesn't work for every situation. For instance, a child cannot consent to sex with an adult. That's still rape, even if it's arguably consent. You know, you and I can't consent to getting in a fight out in the parking lot and alleviate ourselves of criminal charges. We could still be criminally charged for fighting in public. But in this situation, we're talking about in the privacy of their homes or hotel rooms or wherever the hell they were. You know, her request and his fulfillment of it, I think, is a valid defense. Now, if her attorneys have said, "Hey, we got a fractured skull. Nobody consents to a fractured skull." The medical record that's attached to the complaint to verify the fractured skull specifically says there is no fractured skull. So I don't know where the fractured skull's coming from, but arguably that's where I think consent could fall to the wayside when the physical damage is so severe that the argument is nobody would have consented to this. You went too far.
Dan, your take?
Yeah, well, my take is, it's going to be put out there. It's going to be kind of similar to the Duke lacrosse case way back in the day. Was this a setup? Was she on the prowl? I'm not saying this is the case, but when he comes out with those text messages and you look at the language in the text messages and okay, was there, you can say, I want, the language in the text messages will speak for itself. And if there's even anything she provides after, she would still have to prove that it came from him too, right? Like she could say, I have black eyes or I have these types of injuries. How did it come from him? Yes or no? Like, did you have a fractured skull? Well, if Justin's saying, because I'm not even familiar with that, A, there was no fractured skull, but B, did these black eyes even come from him? Yes or no? Like, what is her history? All that sorts of stuff. Is she really the type of person that's going to want, all this stuff coming out, or was it a play for her? Whatever. All that sorts of nasty types of things is what is going to kind of go down this wormhole that I think we're all kind of sick of. And it's surprising because you see, I don't know, what was the show? Was it Real Sports? We saw Trevor Bauer on like a couple years ago where we're all kind of fascinated with this cat. He was unique. He was different. He kind of went to the beat of his own drummer. And now it's like, oh man, he's into all this freaky stuff and you wouldn't expect this. And, it's kind of almost, kind of the Deshaun Watson thing all over again. It's like all of his teammates, like when all that stuff broke with Deshaun Watson, it was like, no way Deshaun Watson is involved in this type of behavior. And then all of a sudden there's 22 people coming forward and his defense attorney saying, well, it's all consensual. Well, some of it's consensual or whatever they're saying is, well, yeah, maybe it did happen, but whatever. And it's like, oh man, this is weird. We don't know what happened, but if some of this happened, it's weird. So it's all just kind of a weird, surprising, unfortunate thing, no matter what happened. And man, this guy 1 minute seemed to be on top of the world. And now it's like, no matter how it shakes out, it's not an ideal situation for him.
Yeah, I think Dan's right. I mean, in this situation, her sexual history is going to be front and center because clearly from the text messages, I think it's clear that there is some sort of consensual physical demands on sex. And if that's the way she likes to perform sex and that's how it is for her with all of her partners, that's going to be relevant. It absolutely is going to be relevant to what Dan said. Well, how do we know those black eyes came from Trevor Bauer and not from some other situation in which you were asking a guy to slap you around or a girl to slap you around? I don't know. I'm not going to make any presumptions. So yeah, it's gonna be nasty. It's gonna be, and you know what? I don't know what possibly the MLB can figure out in 7 days on this, and add in another 7 days. This stuff is going to go on for a while, unless there's some sort of settlement that's agreed to. But I mean, I don't know how long MLB can continue to put them on the exempt list and not play as they try to figure this out. My thought was, and my opinion always was, if somebody's charged with a crime that's physical in nature, they're suspended until such time as the criminal proceedings come to a close. At this point, there have been no criminal charges. There's an open investigation. I would not suspend them until I've talked to the authorities and they say that they're going to press charges. I'm not the criminal, I'm not the criminal justice system, and that's not my purpose.
Dan?
So,
well, they don't have, the NFL has kind of their exempt list type thing. I think the MLB's, now of course there's some sort of joke in there, right? About, well, a pitcher only getting to work every 7 days, getting suspended every 7 days. But, again, that's always that fine line, right? Now, everybody was aghast at first when this stuff came out, right? They were talking about pictures and this and that. Now it's such a gray area. I'm inclined to really kind of agree with Justin a little bit, where it sounds terrible, because anytime you're talking about potential domestic violence, you're like, well, if it turns out to be true, well, what if there turns out to be video? What if it's like Ray Rice? You're going to look terrible, right? Because what was the big thing about Ray Rice? They were going to not do anything, but then there was the video. Well, now it's awful. How did they not suspend that man? If there's a video and you don't suspend them, it's damned if you do, damned if you don't. But I tend to, I'm inclined to agree with Justin, which is, who are they to be the arbiters of this? And if there's no clear delineation in the collective bargaining agreement about it, if there's no clear direction as to what they should or should not do, if they do not have a policy, then if he's not charged, you can kind of keep kicking the can down the road a little while, but eventually I think you have to clear it. I don't say clear him, but you have to clear him to return to work.
yeah, and to answer sort of Ryan's questions on there, a DA decides to charge what, Ryan's saying basically, until there's a conviction, you let somebody play. But if I'm running a multi-billion-dollar a year sports organization, and I've got athletes who are out there and there's allegations of physical crimes, domestic violence, rape, murder, whatever, anything that's physically harmful, when there have been charges pressed, legally speaking, the authorities believe that there's probable cause to bring those charges. To me, I feel as an organization, I would be sufficient to rely upon their findings that they have probable cause. Could we end up being wrong? Certainly you can end up being wrong, but at least I have vested my trust in the people whose job it is to investigate these things and to keep us safe, which is a hell of a lot better than investing in whoever I'm going to hire to try to perform and find out the facts of the matter. So it's a clear, bright line that you can make. And I think if you make that bright line at the end of conviction, then you can have people play their whole careers. The average football career, for instance, is 2.3 years. They can play their whole career before the case even gets tried, before they even get convicted. So you would have, in theory, a rapist, a murderer. Well, murderer probably wouldn't be out, but a potential rapist, out there playing football for you. And then they get convicted after their career. That doesn't seem like the right balance to me.
We had an interesting this offseason. We had an interesting situation with Von Miller, who's also, they had to decide if they're going to pick up the option on his contract. He is having a child with a woman, but they were having a public dispute kind of via Instagram and things like that. She made an allegation that she called the cops, and of domestic violence. Here in Colorado, we have a compulsory arrest law, and according to our statutes, he should have been arrested. There's really no discretion involved with the police, but we had a new DA in that district, and they, out of an abundance of caution, he got the benefit that no other really similarly situated defendant ever would get in Colorado, and they decided not to arrest him. So normally what's supposed to happen is you're supposed to be charged automatically, and then in order to not move forward with a charge, you would have to, the DA, the burden would be on the DA to go to the judge and then say, I don't believe I can get a conviction here. I have to dismiss these charges. But that's not what happened here. And then they make up, even if the victim recants, they still move forward with the charges here in Colorado, because they have victim, that, which is common, right? It's a cycle and all that stuff. They have experts that testify, well, that's common. Here's the reasons why, and here's why it's important we still go, because, victims end up dead, right? They go back to their abusers, things like that. But Vaughn gets back with her, she recants, and the Broncos, they're lying in wait to decide, whether they're going to, pick up his option or not. And so the police kind of like, hey man, we have everything we need to move forward. Why aren't you charging him? So they're fighting with the DA, and this brand new DA is like, I don't know if I want my first thing here is to, put one of the most, iconic Broncos that brought us a Super Bowl 4 years ago on trial. So the police kind of leak it out that he's quote, under investigation, not even leaking it. They're confirming it. So it was quite the drama for a while. Ultimately, the DA says, I'm not doing it. I'm not charging it. So he escapes all that and actually plays the Broncos quite nicely. They said, will you take a pay cut? He says, no, release me. And they said, okay, fine, we'll pay you $18 million. So he walks on all of it, and never has to miss a game because he never got charged. And so under that policy, he was fine.
All right. You got me still?
Yeah, nothing to add to that. I mean, that lays it all out, right? I mean, that's the flip side of waiting for charges, is that sometimes people are going to get scot-free based on their celebrity. But again, I think if you try to do it yourself, if you try to make yourself the private investigation firm to determine guilt or innocence of people, you're way afield of your business and industry.
All right.
The Cosby, the Cosby throws out the first pitch. The Cosby thing and the Kraft thing is a very unpopular opinion, but the Kraft thing, these are constitutional things where, the Kraft thing was they were videotaping anybody that walked to that massage parlor without a warrant. I mean, the warrant just said, all right, anybody that goes in there, we're videotaping you. It's unconstitutional. The thing with Cosby was, they made a deal with him. Give up your constitutional rights. We promise we're not going to charge you. We will not use these statements against you. And then later they say, oh, nope, we're going to use, we're going backwards on that, and we're going to send you to prison on it. Like, you can't do it, right? Find some other way to do it if you're going to do it, but you can't do that. And if you want the system to work, it has to work for everybody. Yep. That's the way it is. And you could have found somebody else. If you did this to all these other people, go charge them with those, but you can't do it with the way they did it that way. And that's just the way it goes. It's not popular, but that's the way it is.
I'm not pumping
Cosby decision's a good decision.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not pumping my fist for Cosby, but I will tell you, all of the legal analysts that we lean on, all of you guys said basically the same exact thing without hesitation, that, it's disturbing. Like, in a lot of ways, it doesn't feel right overall, but from the justice standpoint, the procedural standpoint, yeah, they screwed up.
Yep.
I just don't know how a judge ever got there. Like, they even brought in the original DA, and the DA said, yeah, I don't believe you can charge him with this crime. And I don't know how the judge got there, but the judge says, well, I think you can. And they move forward.
So, yeah, the way the judge read that is, he said, well, in our statute, you have to consummate that in a written agreement, and you never did that. And they had Cantor on, and he had to testify. And actually, the trial judge, did not find DA Cantor credible. said that did not. He was inconsistent with his reasoning and what it exactly meant. So it was somewhat of a novel finding, and they couldn't point to any other precedent where this had happened, where it had not an agreement had not been consummated in writing. But the bottom line is, they said, "Hey, you said something to the public, and you said something to him specifically, and your stated purpose for that was to induce him to waive his constitutional rights. He did. Laws of contract are the same here. He was detrimentally relying on your word. He waived his constitutional rights. It's over." So great decision. It's going to protect a lot of people. There's a lot of people who get tricked into giving up their constitutional rights, and they don't have the pool or the attorneys or the money to be able to fight it to this level. But I think this decision is going to help a lot of people.
All right. We hit on this yesterday on the air, and there's one important thing we didn't hit on. But I actually still believe this is a little guy case. It may not be popular to seek justice the way I was looking, but I'll punch the story up again. Dan, I don't know if you saw this, but there was a cat who kept going back and forth from Nevada to L.A. and was buying fireworks, right? So they get a tip that he's got like 5,000 pounds of fireworks in and around his house. The police go out there. It turns out he's got 32,000 pounds of fireworks, right? So, they're going to get him on all the charges they can. And let me punch up the story. It should be coming up in a second. But the crazy thing is where the story went from the arrest is they then decided, even though this guy brought all of those fireworks into the neighborhood, that they couldn't take the risk of transporting all of these fireworks out of the neighborhood. So they tried to use some of their detonation equipment. They've got like a detonation truck, but the stuff was too powerful and they wound up blowing up like freaking, they damaged 9 homes between law enforcement and local people in the area. 17 people got hurt. And the story was all about, well, yeah, it's the guy. I mean, that's all his fault. He's in trouble for all of this. And when Justin's back in, he can kind of explain that, it is his fault, but I just wondered from the LAPD standpoint, like the city is off scot-free. They're the ones, when they tried to detonate it, they blew it. Pun intended.
Well, yeah, they'll have immunity. I'm guessing. I don't know. Certain jurisdictions get sued anyway, and they wind up coming to settlements. But yeah, you got to feel for the guy. I broke the law. I didn't tell you guys to be morons and idiots. If you would allow me to continue my enterprise responsibly and not screw things up the way governments do, none of this would have happened. You guys were the morons that blew them up and killed people. It's like, remember when they the whale died on the beach, and they're like, we don't know how to get this whale out of here. We'll blow it up, and it the dead rotting whale carcass rained all over the city, and everybody got sick, and they're like, there's whale carcass everywhere. Not a good idea. Blowing up 17 tons of fireworks in broad daylight in the neighborhood isn't a good idea. So that's just the way of the world, I guess.
So Justin, it's hard to go after the LAPD.
I think it's hard to go after the LAPD. They're going to have immunity absent some sort of gross negligence where, some guy was like, yeah, we're going to blow it up and we're going to get this guy in trouble. From a criminal standpoint, I think the dude's still going to be on the hook for all the damages and injuries that result, because it's about foreseeability, right? You brought over fireworks for the purposes of blowing them up. It's foreseeable that they would blow up in a manner that you didn't intend and that it would harm people. So I think both criminally and civilly, all the consequential actions are foreseeable. It's foreseeable that somebody's going to mishandle it as they try to apprehend you. I really do think all of that's foreseeable. The interesting part, like we talked about on the radio the other day, was the police chief's statement that the truck itself, the vehicle, didn't perform properly, that it wasn't a mishap on their part, but was a mishap on the vehicle's part. And from a civil attorney standpoint, from a personal injury attorney standpoint, that's music to my ears. That's what I want to hear. I don't want to go after the police department. They have immunity. Even if I do get to sue them, it's going to, and they waive some immunity, it's probably going to have limited damages. But a products claim against a vehicle manufacturer, now that sounds pretty good. I got an insurance policy I can go after. I got the most credible people, the experts on the bomb squads over at the police department, telling me, doing my job for me, telling me that the product was defective.
Dan, anything else?
Yeah, no, well, from the criminal perspective, I wouldn't mind defending. I mean, depending on what they charged him with, the subsequent stuff, it would depend on what they charged him with. As a defense attorney, I wouldn't mind defending that case, because that I can defend. But I would, and to be honest with you, what's this guy probably got? If they sue him civilly, come on, all right, great, I'm going to jail for a little while. I don't got any money. Fine, sue me. You know, I'm never paying you back anyway. But yeah, I mean, that's Justin's right on as far as products liability. He will be getting that Battleborn suite.
Yeah.
All right. I want to move on to a little bit of name, image, likeness. Dan, have you noticed any? I don't know if you've talked about it on your show on The Fan at all. Have you noticed any interesting sponsorships, anything that could be a violation? I know Justin has pointed out multiple times that the states that are allowing athletes to use the logo and colors and the name of the school early on may have an advantage over the states that are not. Like Arkansas is prohibiting the athletes from doing it. Florida is not. So I think that's going to be one of the early kinks in this whole thing to work out.
Well, here was the interesting thing I never thought of. I mean, I always contended all along. I mean, right now it's kind of the Wild West. They're going to have to get this regulated real quick. But I have a guy named John Davis who's MBA that we host with. In fact, he and I'll be doing a show tomorrow night. I always thought of it, this will be bad because it'll shrink the amount of players in the sport, right? It's particularly college football, maybe basketball, but it's just going to be the same 5 or 10 schools all the time. But when I had actually Justin on a couple of weeks back when the Supreme Court decision came down, which was not the name, image, likeness, it was more in regards to what the schools could pay, right? But Justin had talked about actually the name, image, likeness is the potential for the doozy. Actually, this could be the reverse. Think about this. You could, if let's say who's the guy, Jay-Z, the guy that all the young guys want to be around, that has, $1 billion at his disposal. He could go to, or corporations that want to influence, their brand or whatever. They can actually, instead of Alabama and Texas winning all the titles, they can pick out any school they want and say, I don't know, Colorado State or UNLV. Let's say UNLV. Hey, we're gonna outfit you guys real nice, but we're gonna pick out the top 20 recruits that we want. We're gonna pay them to endorse our brand, and we're gonna start winning championships here. I never really thought of it as a way that corporations can now influence, buy championships, influence the sports in a way that I just had never really thought about before. Because you think about, well, boosters, which boosters can be involved now, but I always thought about it as restricting and narrowing the ways that, closing off the sport. Actually, it can bring in new schools that you'd never thought about before, in ways that are interesting to me. UNLV, go Rebels.
Exactly. Justin, I've not been saying this for a year or so, that the have-nots actually have a chance to become haves because, and especially, I don't know, think about it. I'm not saying, SEC schools are full of dorks who aren't going to make money, post college career. I'm talking about the students, but in certain areas, like on the West Coast, if you view a school as a sleeping giant, a giant that is sleeping, you could, the Pac-12 could blow up all of a sudden with a bunch of money. I mean, UCLA and USC are completely intriguing schools now. They always have been, but the possibilities there. But there could be, and we've already seen it via. And do I know officially that Wichita State was cheating? I don't know, but it was heavily funded by the Koch brothers. And then all of a sudden, like 10 years ago, like, wait, Wichita State's a basketball power, Gonzaga's a basketball power. Yeah, of course this can happen. It's harder in football because of the numbers, but I think there's a chance to actually have more balance rather than scrunching it up and all the money's going to. I think it's going to be spread out. There's money everywhere in this country.
Yeah, I agree. I think it provides for a space for creativity rather than the single donor, right? I mean, corporations' ability to create winners wherever they want. Just go to Eugene, Oregon, right? I mean, they just did it. They just decided we're going to spend billions of dollars on this university because it's where I went to school, and I want them to be good, and I want them to be good at everything. So they're just going to have the best shit. And it did. It made them good. It takes a while, and it hasn't resulted in any national championships in football. But hell, the U.S. Olympic Trials was just at their track and field was at their stadium. They get the best track and field stadium in the country, right? They got one of the best football fields. They got all the uniforms, right? So it can happen already. But I think that this little Wild West period before it gets all super heavily regulated, just to protect those same 10 or 15 schools again. Before that happens, I think there's this opportunity for creative minds to make their schools more competitive. And I think there's space for creative-minded student athletes to promote themselves in ways other than just athletics to set them up for the future. We talked about this. What is it? Fresno State, the Twins over there, right? I don't know if they're any damn good at basketball, but they have 1 million Instagram followers and they got an endorsement deal. And now I've heard of them, right? And if they're smart and they use that exposure to marketing and business and the tie-in and social media, they might be setting themselves up for a better career after college days rather than WNBA, which it doesn't appear that they're inclined to, or athletically gifted enough to make. But they can be influencers. They can be marketers. They are getting exposure that most of us will never get. And so I love every aspect of it. I know there's going to be some bad contracts. I know there's going to be some squeakiness here, and there's going to be some bullshit there, and we'll have to catch it. And it's going to develop over time. But man, I love when it opens up and creative minds can work, and that's what's about to happen. That is what's happening. It's great.
And to the guy's point, RDKX 259 isn't that what Adidas and Nike were doing? What we're talking about now is like for Nike, for example, at Oregon, they could just give them money. Like they can go to the number one recruit, right? And just say, I want to give you a sponsorship contract, recruit number one for $10 million and recruit number two, $9 million and recruit number three, $8.5 billion and recruit number four, and so on and so on. They can literally just you're going to have the nicest gear and the nicest stadium. We're going to give you $10 million, all of you. If they wanted, they can say every recruit, we're going to give you each, $10 million or whatever. Like they can literally just now stacks of cash. That's how they can do it. In any corporation, the Koch brothers can go to Wichita and say, yeah, man, we got $100 million to buy you the best players we can buy. Right. That's how we're going to do it now. It's wide open. I
would argue that that's not allowed. Right. I mean, the spirit and intent of the rule is that it is a real good faith contract for name, image, and likeness use. Right. And if you ain't worth 10 million and you're not, and
how are you going to quantify that?
Yeah. I mean, well, let's say,
how can you say a top recruit, the number one recruit or a top 20 recruit in the NCAA is not worth $8 million? How are you going to quantify that?
Hold on. If they don't do shit for it, that's what I mean. You can't just give them $10 million. There better be some action on their part.
Yeah, they're signing an endorsement deal.
No, they got to do. What's the endorsement deal? What are they doing? Are they appearing on TV commercials?
Of course they are.
Are they sending out to their social media? If they're getting a $10 million contract to do social media posts and they have 250 followers, not 250,000 or 2 million, then I'm calling bullshit, right? Like that's not. You're clearly paying to play, which is clearly still against the NCAA rules. That is clear. Right now,
but the expectation would be that when you go and you score those touchdowns, you're going to get the 200. You're going to get your followers, and whatever. I mean, that's exactly how it's going to go.
I don't know. I don't know if that's how it's going to go or not. From my perspective, I think like the way it makes it competitive for, say, UNLV is rather than having this big booster who's forking out millions of dollars, right? You're providing a resource center, right? Like you're providing, instead of a career services department, a marketing services department, and you're providing them with, hey, here's the things you need to look out for in contracts, and here's all the different companies that in locally who have signed endorsement deals. Here's who you should contact, and from the creative standpoint of what you and I do, Dan, of lawyers, is I've become a marketing agent. NCAA can't stop that. They can stop a player agent, but not a marketing agent, not a PR representative. So you can get there's some creative, clever ways to get in on these kids early, and you become their agent before they're signing pro deals. I'm not saying that that's good, but that's going to start happening too.
Yeah, I mean, they already said that, right? They already said they're going to already have those agents, right?
Yeah, they have to be able to. Yeah. I mean, how could you prevent? I mean, they just go right back to court if they said they couldn't, right? Because it'd still be an antitrust violation if they said you couldn't have representation on these things. So I'm excited to see where it goes. Yeah, there's going to be some bad stuff, but I also think that there is a spirit and intent of the rule. What the antitrust law says is you cannot prevent a student athlete from marketing their name, image, and likeness. You can. The court has said you can regulate pay for play. You can. And you could do that and restrict it. And so there's absolutely going to be rules about, and there's going to be some discretion about looking at things and figuring out, is this pay for play or is this a viable, real, good faith contract?
Yeah, but the problem for pay for play is this whole thing started with Ed O'Bannon, which was the NCAA was the video game, right? Why is your name, image, and likeness valuable? Because people like watching you play, right? It's pay for play. You're valuable. Your name, image, and likeness is valuable because of the way you play. So it's, how are you going to prove that? When you say the spirit of it, that's the whole thing.
Because if they're paying you more than what it's worth, right? Like, let's just take an absurd example, right? Just to illustrate the point. Let's say that the NCAA football game made $100 million a year in profits, and the owner or CEO or EA Sports, I have no idea, is an alumnus of University of Florida, and he signs contracts with only the players from University of Florida to appear in the game, and he gives them more than $100 million. No, it's not a real contract, right? It's not. There's clearly indications that this is not a real good faith arm's length deal being made between those two parties, because one's losing money and excluding everybody else.
Who's going to litigate it now?
Everybody, you and I. What are you talking about? I'll take those fucking cases. What do you?
Yeah, well, I'm not saying which lawyers are going to litigate it. Yeah. Is Florida State going to sue Florida, or I mean, why would you? Who's going to sue who?
You've got thousands of student athletes out there, any one of which has standing to sue in that situation. I mean, that's not going to happen, right? It's an absurd example. It's a super absurd example, just to illustrate the point.
Right. No, but
there is going to be some guardrails.
So Justin Watkins Jr. signs. So Domino's says Justin Watkins Jr. signs at UNLV. He got $7 million endorsement deal, and he had 1,500 followers on Instagram. So who's suing him?
Well, they're going to have to sue because deal? The NCAA will create a rule, right? They'll make a judgment, and they're going to say
they're already, but they've thrown up their hands. Isn't that what they just done?
I don't think so. They still have a pay for play restriction, right?
I think they've thrown up their head now. They said you got what you wanted. Fine, go.
Yeah. I mean, they'll say that until everything gets super out of whack. Until you see.
Yeah. I mean, I agree with you. You
don't think within conferences, schools that are or at the bottom are not able to get funding like that, they're not going to fight back.
Well,
I mean, there's also a spirit of competition. I know it's laughable, but within conferences too.
Well, eventually, that's why I said when we started this whole discussion. Right now, it's the Wild West. They're gonna have to, otherwise this thing is going to be obscene. It's going to be absurd. They're going to have to find a way to regulate this stuff, because it'll be uncontrollable. Like I said, it's the Wild West now. That's fine. It's going to be fun, but sports will just be unrecognizable. Nobody's going to like the way this thing ends up if you don't find a way to regulate it, and it will be regulated.
I mean, I don't know. I don't know about all that either. I think that like if the NCAA truly just says, you know what, there's nothing we can do, I think the natural consequence of that is the haves and have-nots will split up, right? Like the conferences that want to pay, and they want to pay players without any sort of restrictions, and don't want to deal with the NCAA. Let's call them the Power Five, although I don't know that everybody would be invited in the Power Five. They just say, you know what, we're starting our own association for ensuring that we're all on a level playing field, but we can't be on a level playing field with team 315. They're not trying hard like we are. They're not spending like we are. We're not on the same level. So I think that's a possible consequence too. I think what's more likely is what Dan's saying. I think that the NCAA will let things go for a little bit, see how bad it gets, and then everybody will kind of agree, will want to come to the table to sort of create some guidelines. But I think there are other possibilities in which this fractures the NCAA and it becomes a relic. And there's a future of two different sort of, or three different sort of associations.
We were going that way anyway.
Yeah. I'm all for it.
It was an unfair playing field. I mean, if you use the state of Nevada as an example, we have to put up so much money for both of these programs, to stay afloat and to try to make money because they really don't have a real shot at the football money. And that was unfair. I've done the rant a million times. What I would love to see come out of this is I'd like to see a lot of, not traditional sports advertisers really want to get involved in college football and college basketball, but also look at it like, you know what? We want athletes in places that actually have a population where people actually make money. We want to sell there. And then all of a sudden you're like, well, why was it that Lawrence, Kansas and Lincoln, Nebraska and Norman, Oklahoma and Tuscaloosa, Alabama, why are they automatically powers? I don't want to put my fucking money in Podunk. Like I want to be in New York and LA and Miami and Dallas and San Francisco. So I think the introduction of creative new advertising, outlets or whatever monies, right? Could have a shift that way. I don't know how college football is going to be and what it's going to be like in 10 years. Or college basketball, especially because you don't need, 45 really good players or 40 good players.
Well, and if we also stop pretending that they were paying for scholarships, that would help too.
What do you mean by that?
Oh, I thought we talked. Well, I talked about it on my show. When they take at least the academic part of it, I had this conversation on my show. When I was in law school, I went to the dean and said, the scholarship I have here, are you paying extra for that? Because they actually charge the athletic department.
Right.
It's like taking $5 out of one pocket and putting it in the other pocket, right? They transfer the money out of the account, right? And then they, pretend like they're paying the school itself for that money. And they do it for all the sports, right? Because Title IX and all that, they got to pretend they're switching this money around. So it goes from one pocket to the next, and it's all this money being moved around that doesn't mean nothing. And I asked them, I said, so you really spending money for all these scholarships? Does it cost you any more? Are you bringing in extra professors? Does it cost you more? Now the room and board is different, right? If they're putting up more dorms or whatever, that's one thing. But as far as the academic portion,
this is why everyone on the other side of this is like, they already get a lot of value with the education they get. The education number is an arbitrary number. What it actually costs to educate a kid, it's $70,000 a year. They're getting a free education. That number's so bloated. Can anyone really quantify the number for real?
Well,
what the Supreme Court said is it doesn't freaking matter, right? You can't price fix labor, and they are labor. What the Supreme Court said is along the way, you were supposed to be an institution that was just there to ensure that everybody was playing by the same set of rules. And then you monetized it. And then you monetized it to such a magnitude that you became a business and an industry. And once you became a business and an industry, you are subject to the antitrust laws like any other business and industry. And that means that you can't be anti-competitive in regards to the consumer, and you can't, that's the output side, and you can't be anti-competitive in regards to the input side, the labor. So you can't price fix labor. I don't care. It doesn't matter if the scholarship money and the price of education was significant. It doesn't matter. It's that you price fixed labor, and you can't do that. You've got to be you have to be pro-competitive in that regard.
Can I, maybe this is a silly question. Were either one of you guys encouraged by the SCOTUS decision, but especially with some of the new justices that were put in there by Trump, like Kavanaugh, who went out of his way to go next level? Does that give anyone hope that, like, hey, you know what, everyone who was put in, they're going to do what they're supposed to do? It's not going to be a political court. It shouldn't be a political court. Like in this case, you would think, like, Kavanaugh, you know, we just start thinking like, hey, you know, from his kind of background, it would be like, fuck the kids, who care? You know, I'm gonna go more politically where I need to go. Am I being goofy here or what?
No, I thought Kavanaugh was a blowhard in his non-binding. What was it? Concurrence. I thought he was a little bit of a blowhard. That everybody that the media ran with, and that's not law right now. So everybody was running with like his scathing, like, oh, if you don't, you know, this is what's, and that's not. If that's what all the justices thought, that's what they would have put in the binding opinion. And the binding opinion is what it is. And you're trying to reel me in, Steve. Not that I have a problem with this decision so much. I have a deep problem with the way it's more of a political issue, but the way the court was improperly imbalanced. So I'm not going to go down that rabbit hole with you, but also no, I thought it was a little bit of grandstanding, and that was a non-binding concurrence or whatever it was that I thought was, like I said, grandstanding on his part.
Yeah, I think I know what you're saying, Steve. Is like, hey, you know, the political process and the appointment gets us all spun up in wheels into the idea that these people are going to be the worst people or the best people in the world for any one of our particular political leanings. And the reality is, right now, this new court, the plurality, not majority, but more than any other type of decision, the decisions have been unanimous. Most decisions have been, well, the plurality, so not the most. It's like 30% have all been unanimous, and then second behind that is like one dissenter. So, yeah, I mean, they're going to do their job, and you know, these are smart people. They are. They didn't get this far by being dummies, and you know, I will say I was surprised about Kavanaugh's position in regard. He was very strong in pro-labor in his statement in concurrence. He was more so than I would have thought, based on my perception of what his political leanings were based on his appointment and his confirmation hearing. So yeah, I was a little surprised by that, but I mean, from their perspective, clearly they thought this was an easy one. And I think the point was that Kavanaugh wanted to say, and he wanted to send a message, and NCAA, if you think we won't go farther, we will. Now, everybody else didn't sign on to that, but I certainly wouldn't want to be the one who challenges that again if I'm with the NCAA, when one of the more pro open market guys is saying, you bring this again and you're going to get smacked even worse, right? So I thought it was an interesting opinion of his, certainly surprising, but again, it was unanimous. They thought it was easy. They thought this was an easy issue.
All right, good deal. Dan, what do you got coming up on the fan?
Yeah, so one of our guys, Orlando Franklin, is the former guard and right tackle. He's going to coach for the Niners coaching internship. So I'll be on like pretty much the rest of the month. So he's taken off. So I'm on tomorrow night, 7 to 10. And then I think I'm doing the late night shift the rest of the month. But yeah, real quick, I was going to say, so one of the reasons we know that the Broncos are getting sold is our own John Bolin, who's in Vegas right now, like spending his inheritance. He's an interesting follow on Instagram. I mean, part of it's sad because he's suffering from something, but he is an interesting follow. But he's sitting there pretty much, and none of the other media seems to be picking up on this. But he's sitting there saying, yes, the team's being sold. But also last week, the two parties that were supposed to go to trial this week, I think was going to be the trial. They filed a joint motion to vacate because they were going to trial over whether or not the trustee that's controlling the team, the trust that controls the team right now, had a right to exist. The team's going to get sold. We're going to have new ownership. But he's also out there on Instagram saying, yes, I'm going to get 400 to 900 million. He's out there in Vegas right now playing golf every day and doing things at night and just having a grand old time, plotting his riches, which is kind of sad because he was the guy that was supposed to be. He was the heir apparent. He was the favorite.
He was the hope.
Yeah.
He was the hope for the Bronco fans that they could keep the team, that the Bolins would keep the team.
Yeah, he was the one that Pat Bowlen clearly wanted to be the guy. He had been, similar to actually Josh Kroenke, going around running or interning in various parts of the organization to learn every little piece of the organization so he could one day take over. And then he had, I don't know if you guys ever heard the Blood of the City call. He had a call, his 911 call where he said, I'm the Denver Broncos, I'm the blood of the city. Things kind of went sideways from there. And he actually was not able to attend his dad's, I think it was his Hall of Fame ceremony, things like that, because he's just too out of control and things like that. But he's in your town now, Steve. You might want to hook up with him and show him the good places to eat or whatever.
Sure. Get the good treatment, right? Why not? All right, guys. I appreciate you stepping in tonight. Justin, appreciate you doing double duty. I know you got a lot going on, so a lot of responsibilities right now. And I was glad to hear the good news earlier, too, about the treatments and the experimental treatment. That's really good stuff. So, all right, guys. Talk to you. Have a good weekend. For the viewers, we appreciate you coming in. We'll be back on Monday, so no podcast tomorrow, no DC and the Sunshine Man tomorrow, so we're back on Monday.
That's an outrage.
I know. Some days off from the podcast, but we're back on Monday with the pod. But back tomorrow, Cofield and Company starting.